I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate. We think too much and feel too little. Think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness. Without these qualities, life will be violent. And all will be lost. All will be lost. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die. Dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Will return to the people. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, to do away with greed. Now let us fight to free the world, to fulfill that promise. Let us all unite.
Welcome, folks, to the Corporation Nation. This is Clint, your host, and my guest today on this fine Wednesday, April 23rd, is my weekly guest. His name is Daniel. His Christian name, I should say, is Daniel. One who refuses to use the surname, which is government property. His YouTube channel is Christian Remedy in Law. That's Christian Remedy in Law. When we left Daniel last week, he was actually reading his, what I understand is basically the final step to his process he's been going through, trying to rid himself of any ties to said surname, nickname, whatever you want to call it. And so we're going to get into that today. But I got to tell you, folks, Monday, I guess, is going to be the day that I'm going to go it alone again, and I want to talk to you about what I've been discovering. I have not felt this overwhelmed with research probably since I did my last documentary. I've been working on a new documentary, inspired by this whole Nevada thing with the Bundy Ranch, because it's just one of those things that it invokes you when you see something like this, something that just doesn't seem right. When government comes down on people, it invokes me, I would think it would invoke most people, to actually go and look and see what the heck's happening. And so I've been reading all of the state constitutions, and I've been reading all of the enabling acts. I've been reading I finally found something that really put me over the edge today, which is basically I've been going on the presumption, because of previous research and reading other people's work, that there was never a declaration of peace after the Civil War. And I actually found that Declaration of Peace today, and it's much worse. It's much worse than if the Civil War never actually ended. I was very pleased to be wrong in this case, because now there's actually a lawful precedent for the tyranny and martial law that we're actually under. And unfortunately for Texans, who more than any state believe that they are a free people with a republic and all of that, this very much poo-poos that idea, and we'll get into that on Monday, where I'll spend the whole time probably talking about this, because what I've found just completely destroys the notion of anyone who, at this point, anyone who claims constitutionalism or to be a constitutionalist is just, oh boy, I don't even know what to say. It's really no different than recognizing your surname, as we've talked about with Daniel. But one thing I have realized is something that Daniel has stressed over the last couple months, and now I understand what it really means. There's this whole thing that we're suffering in this country, and that people are suffering around the world because of our military and our United States government, the occupation of lands across the nation. It all extends to one very simple concept that no one's ever thought before. It's just eluded everyone. And that simple word is peace. Peace. The United States is in a state of perpetual military rule, military force. We've discussed this before, that the executive office of government literally means the forceful branch of government. Without it, the legislative and judicial would have absolutely no authority. Government means control. That is what it's defined as, both in the dictionaries and in government's own words. Control. Yet we still say, well, we have a free government. We're a free people. Ridiculously, the words free and control don't really belong in the same sentence. And, of course, if you identify as people, then you've given away your sense of or disposition of being free, and you've become part of a body politic, giving up all rights, basically, to accept the political rights of the people. And so what I've discovered is that everything wrong that we all know and we all sense comes from one simple dang fact that has eluded me this whole time, and that is simply that the United States, the District of Columbia, is at war with everybody on Earth, including the States United, the 50 states and all of its insular possessions. These are not free countries, if you will. They are military possessions. They are militarily occupied nations. And we'll get into that more on Monday. But I wanted to really stress that what Daniel has brought forth hopefully has invoked in most people is the understanding that peace is the goal here. And you cannot have peace by being part of a military corporation. And that is really the nature of what citizenship is. Supporting the Constitution, and every state in the Union supports the Constitution as supreme law of the land. That means that you support every military action of the United States, and it also means that you support the military intervention and tyranny of the United States in every state. You support the fact that a military base is in every state, occupying that state. This is what I've discovered, and I now have all of the evidence I need, finally, to prove that and to disprove anyone who disagrees with it. And that's my next documentary. Welcome to the show, Daniel. Let's talk about peace, man.
That's really the subject. When I went down this journey, the biggest problem is to find peace of mind. When you seem to be surrounded with chaos, confusion, and you don't have to spend too long on the news to actually realize that the news they carry is bad news. They've even had people who tried to actually change that. There was actually a major television station in Toronto that tried to put a segment in their morning that dealt with good news, if you can imagine that. Well, they weren't allowed to do that because the nations that are part of this G20 nation that meet every year are about bad news, not about good news, not about peace. They're about war and all the chaos that happens in a day that you can barely stomach to listen to anymore. So I tend to be someone who stays away from the newspapers and the media, which really comes from the Medes and Persians, who were pagans who believed in war, not peace. So I stay pretty much clear of that.
You said something very important. You said you're trying to get peace of mind. Well, peace of mind cannot exist if you are part of a government, which, as we've discussed before, etymology-wise, literally breaks down to mind control. How can you possibly have peace of mind if you are under a government? Mind control. That's a brilliant way of looking at it.
That's right. Down the journey that I went, having been kind of religiously, brought up and always taught about this idea of turn the other cheek and be peaceful and to do the right thing and not to harm your fellow man, it never made sense to me. And my dad explained to me, having been in the war, and he said it was the most shameful thing he ever participated in, and it wanted nothing to do with it, and it made no sense to him because he saw both Catholics and Protestants that were claiming, I would say a title of Christianity.
Hey, Daniel, hold that thought. We'll be back. Stay tuned, folks. So, Danny, I'm sorry. Please continue. Now, I would say that the what you're saying about, I think it was your father, is the same reason that men and women are killing themselves in the thousands across the United States for participating in what can only be called inhumane practices of the United States military.
Well, when my dad was, out where they were going out, I guess, out on the ships, and he was on destroyers. And he told me that he watched the Protestant ministers and the Catholic priests blessing the ships and telling them that they were getting a go-ahead to go and commit crimes against Christ, because he said not to do those things. So they were actually blaspheming the peaceful message of the Prince of Peace and telling them that it was okay for them to go kill their fellow man when Christ said that you were not to bear arms, and he even reproved and chastised one of his own apostles for trying to physically defend him when the Roman soldiers, the civil Roman society at the time, no different than Canada, the United States, and I hope people get this through their head, that their government is no different than the Roman Empire, and I don't see any different in the architecture that's down in the U.S. nor in Canada on their buildings, whether they be courts or whether they be their actual, I would say, legislative buildings to do their law, to pass their man's laws, and so therefore, I don't know where anybody's missing the message on this, but their government is not Christian. It is not a Christian country. It never was a Christian country. It was imposturing as such, and therefore was still dominated by the Roman Empire, just under a different disguise. And all that people are really doing right now is unfortunately being sleepers to the reality, because the truth is stranger than fiction, and they don't want to hear it, and therefore it's easier for them to remain a sleeper, thinking that everything is okay, and my state-organized religion or my state-organized association that I believe will make changes cannot make changes when it doesn't have authorization to do such. And therefore, when you're crossing into the territory of another, you literally have no authority. So what I found was I was imposturing my God-given, unalienable position by allowing myself to be identified as the same on even par, equal par, with people who do not believe in the peaceful teachings on the spiritual side that I was raised with. So my research through the Bible and realizing why it was everywhere started to add up to be something that was uncanny, something that couldn't be coincidental. And therefore I even realized the swearing into the court was just to identify somebody as basically an unbeliever, because they had to swear in with a name that was contrary to their God-given name. And so the minute that they would do that and blaspheme that peaceful name with a war name, they automatically were in the jurisdiction of the court that was going to try them for trespassing on private forbidden property, which is really your Christian name or your God-given name.
Well, this is interesting because one of the things that really bothers me is the concept of an oath. It seems like everything is based on the concept of what an oath is. And when we go back and see what an oath really is, it all derives, of course, from the Catholic Church, and even before that. But it's a false thing. Now, I want to talk about the word fealty before we get into anything else, because when we look at the definitions of the word fealty, we see it's a homage. It's an homage in a feudal society. It's a loyalty sworn to one's lord on becoming his vassal. Other definitions vary, but the fidelity of a vassal or feudal tenant to his lord, the obligation of such fidelity, an oath of fealty from the Latin fidelis, a pledge of allegiance of one person to another. And when I start looking at the history of fealty, and of course considering that the original Pledge of Allegiance of this country was actually to the flag, not to anything else, the war flag basically, and the original official way of stating that allegiance was to hold your hand out in front of you, communist style. That's actually court record, that if you didn't do that, you'd be suspended from school. Your parents would get in trouble because your kid would not pledge allegiance or an oath of fealty to the United States, to the flag. Now, the oath of fealty was sworn during a solemn ceremony necessitating an act of homage. The vassal would appear before the Lord barehanded and without weapons. The vassal, in other words, he'd put his hands out, communist style, and pledge allegiance. The vassal would then kneel before the Lord, grasping his hands as in prayer, which he would stretch outwards towards his Lord. Lord is not, again, we call the government the Lord. The king is Lord. This position signified total submission. When we put our hands in our hearts, we are totally submitting with an oath of fealty to the United States flag and the United States. The vassal then swore the oath of fealty. The Lord would then take the hands of the vassal and announce his acceptance. This is frightening when you put this into perspective of the oath of today and the oath of fealty, or the pledge of allegiance that we have our kids say in school. And I dare say this takes us, again, out of ourselves and puts us into personhood. Would that be correct?
Even the 1828 Noah Webster's even gives us some pretty clear relationships to the word flag. And it says the sense is primarily to bend, okay, or rather to recede, to lag, to hang loose without stiffness, to bend down as flexible bodies, to be loose and yielding. It says to grow spiritless or dejected, to droop, to grow languid, as the spirit flag, to grow weak, to lose vigor, as the strength flag, to become dull. Well, I think that kind of sums up the nation. And
wow.
People participating in it. I went down to Foreign Affairs in Ottawa, where all the nations that at least are within some formal idea of a treaty or a consortium with Canada, and I didn't see any Christian flag down there. And I realized that I was out of sorts there. Many times entering there, I refused to give anything other than my statement of birth record that was filled in at the hospital. It came to the point that they wanted me not to even come back there. They said that they would rather that if I had anything I needed done, just to leave it with them, and they would send it to me somehow through the mail system, because they knew that I was on the edge of something where I wasn't going in with a photo.
All right, Daniel, sorry, we gotta go to break. We'll be back. Welcome back. You're in the Corporation Nation. Now, to further our understanding of fealty and the fact that we basically are born into a state of servitude and then pledge ourselves in fealties when we reach that magical age of consent, fealty is defined as allegiance. Well, the word feel is actually faith or faithful. We don't really use that word, but we have fealty, which means allegiance, and we pledge allegiance. Under the feudal system, from Bouvier's Law Dictionary, under the feudal system, every owner of lands held them of some superior lord. Sound familiar? From whom or from whose ancestors the tenant had received them. By this connection, the lord... in other words, government, the lord became bound to protect the tenant in the enjoyment of the land granted to him. And, on the other hand, the tenant was bound to be faithful to his lord. Oh, can you be faithful to two lords? Jeez. And defend him against all his enemies. This obligation was called fidelitas, or fealty. Now, I want you to consider for a moment what you do and what the law says is required of you when you turn, I believe it's 18, could be 16, but I think it's 18. What do? Well, in America, you join what is called selective service. You make yourself eligible to be drafted into the military. Some of you, because you have no other choice, or so you think, join the military because otherwise you'd be dirt poor and you'd rather kill people for money than not have any money at all. So, what is this really saying? Well, it's literally putting you into the modern age of feudalism. It's a feudal fealty where you agree to protect the United States against all of its enemies, including foreign and domestic, which means your mother and father, your cousins, your uncles, your sons, your daughters, and your whatever. Okay, so you're literally pledging your allegiance and your service in order to enjoy, another legal term, the privilege of living in or on the land granted to you through the process of banking and loans and title and all of that stuff. You enjoy the use of your automobile. You even enjoy the use granted to you of your own children. So, you see, folks, we are in the modern version of the feudal system under a different kind of fealty, and we pledge our allegiance, and we have our kids pledge allegiance, and then, of course, we say, well, now that you're of the age, you must, by law, go and fill out the fealty agreement called selective service, because that's really the only way you're going to be able to enjoy all the privileges of being a good little citizen. Crazy stuff, Daniel.
It is. I think what happens, people have spent their entire life imprinted a certain way. And when you basically look at reality, you should always be doing your own due diligence to find out. I mean, the beginning of anything, even in the legal world, is based on due diligence. So if I don't do my due diligence and look at what I'm possibly walking into, being a participant in whatever it is, a social aggregate of people, there's a responsibility that comes upon me to realize that if I've taken something on and I just haven't done my due diligence, well, ignorance of the law is no excuse. So if there's a penalty incurred for me to not realize that the due diligence of bearing the title of another that may not be mine comes with obligation, duty, debt, all the wonderful things that people seem to be holding on to, despite the fact that they know there's something wrong, is a really bad, bad due diligence. And so that's what I have done. I've done as best I can to do a realistic look at who I am, what I am, and what am I really supposed to do to walk in this chaotic world that looks like it's on its last moments.
Well, more importantly, you've taken a look at what you are not. And that really is, interestingly enough, the most important aspect of this. Now, we we've talked about this, of course, a lot. I'd like to direct people again to Bouvier's Law Dictionary. There's a we have the definition of civil death. In other words, you can be considered dead by government even when you're still alive. So it just basically means the loss of civil rights, and that comes from the term civiliter mortis, meaning civilly dead, one who is considered as if he were naturally dead, so far as his rights are concerned. So, Daniel, this is probably the best way to lead into this, because what people are very concerned with is that they're going to be losing more, all of their civil rights. They're going to be losing the quote-unquote protection of government, which seems to be more important to people than the fact that they're obligated in feudal terms to the government through their fealty and through their Pledge of Allegiance. So really, you have a case where you're really gaining everything and losing nothing, but the fact that we're identified as persons, as civilly alive, gives us certain status above other men, and that's, of course, exactly what the Bible warns and tells us not to do. So I think what people are really worried about, and people have a lot of questions about, is the fact that all of a sudden you're going to be losing all of your civil rights, and technically in the land of employment and all these other aspects, people are going to have more rights than you do in the civil realm. All of a sudden, you're not going to be hireable to a lot of people who have no clue what you mean when you come up and you say, well, I don't have a social security number. I don't operate as an artificial person, or I don't carry that status. They're going to look at you like you're nuts. So that's what people are really, I think, most concerned about, is that they feel they're giving up something when, in fact, they're giving up the state of complete and utter tyranny.
That's right. I mean, when we're looking at words. When I realized that civil meant what we were actually touching on last week, which is unbeliever, it meant someone with no covenant with the true spiritual source of life. I didn't like that feel. It also identified someone as being a pagan, being someone who was nothing more than an animal that had been domesticated into something that had been gentilized or made gentle. It was a calm wild or a calm heathen barbarian that had been brought into more of a gentle domestic mold, and that didn't go well with me. And so when I started to realize that there were two different things going on, there are two separate names, two separate territories. If we wanted to say two separate jurisdictions, there are. And that's why the given name is not the same as the surname, and the surname is not the same as the given name. So yes, in order to be at one, atoned, at one with God or with your spiritual maker, if you're going down this for the right reasons of spirituality, well, then you would have to give up what most people going down a spiritual journey have already realized, that they have to kind of let loose of that carnal idea of relying on the material world to an extent, that's the only thing they have. It's that next morsel of food. So if the government's offering me benefits and privileges through the idea of carrying some title, some debt imprint or label or brand or make, which I would call the surname, well then if I'm willing to accept that, well then I'm not spiritual, because spiritual doesn't have that anxious concern. And therefore they've got most people tied up on it, because if all everything I've ever done, my entirety to life has been based going down the wrong path, of which has been nothing but attached to a duty, debt, and obligation to something that is going nowhere, but down trillions of dollars of debt that no one wants to talk about, well then I'm into a doomsday clock to begin with. But I can make believe that it's not. So to give that back is a very, very disconcerting, very uncomfortable feeling, because I've learned comfort through discomfort.
The easy road always seems to be the most uncomfortable. The one where you're giving up something. But I this goes back to the point that you've made so many times now, and that I now fully grasp, and I hope others do. And that is, when I hear people all throughout the radio and everywhere else saying, I'm a very spiritual person. I don't believe in God, but I'm very spiritual. That tells me something very, very clear, because how can you be? You cannot be both. You cannot be a person and be spiritual. You can't subscribe to both. We'll be back, folks. Stay tuned.
Hi, neighbor. Welcome again to this neighborhood. I'd like to show you something. You know what this is? Maybe if I press this button. Imagine every person that you see is somewhat different from every other person in the world. Some can do some things, some can do others. Did you ever think of the many things you've learned to do? Many things you learned. Did you ever grow anything in the garden of your mind? You can grow ideas in the garden of your mind.
Breaking it down. Well, Daniel, now again, you've gone through a long process. One of the questions that actually more one of the almost insults that people throw for people like you is to say that, well, you're not really going out and being a true Christian, as we say, not really breaking free of the system if, in fact, you are accepting, let's say, donations or accepting the money, the mammon, to sustain yourself. And this is one of those concepts that I think is very hard to break through people's minds about. Of course, the concept of necessity, which is something that's invoked continuously in government, because necessity, again, knows no law, and therefore that's what allows government to basically militarily occupy and oppose its own citizens, because necessity knows no law in a time of war or emergency. So the question is basically, how do you justify, say in your case, where you're up there in Canada and you're living with a few other people there that are basically, if you will, supporting your existence through the same system that you're opposing? That is, I don't mean any offense by asking that. That's a common question.
So it's a very logical question, and something that people have to realize, that if they're really looking for the answer. I went through this very painstakingly in research, because, of course, I was going to where the Christian's charter is in the Bible and say, what did the early Christians do in the beginning of this movement? What were they doing? And according to Scripture, it appeared that the majority of the Christians out there that had accepted the message were selling all their estate, everything they had. And the Apostle Paul, who was sent specifically to the Gentiles or the unbelieving, he was the apostle appointed to actually take the hardest, massive, I would say, mob on to go and talk to, because he was the apostle for the Gentiles, not for his own nation. Even though he was at least what we consider to be a Jew by birth. He basically had explained the fact was that this was an all or nothing. So it said those that had, would suffice for those that were in need. And it's not that you're relying on the system itself. That system will exist until the right system occurs, which has been prayed for, uniquely enough, before they pass bills through the House of Commons or House of Prostitutes in Canada, because commoner means prostitute. They read the Lord's Prayer, which is quite unique. Why would they be reading something like that? Why is it in Parliament? Why was it tried to be removed by even one of the government premiers in Ontario, if it was of no importance, why was it that premier couldn't even get it removed out of there? He said it was no longer appropriate to read the Lord's Prayer in Parliament before they started a session. So why were they reading Matthew 6 if the Bible has no power? Why didn't you just remove it? Simple enough. It's got nothing to do with them. Why are they reading it? Because there's still a time left for those to have a prayer. And so therefore, the message that's really in there, it very simply is, those that go on this walk have the power of God. And they're ambassadors or sojourners, pilgrims in a very strange foreign land according to the rest of the nations that are out there. But at the same time, we're not going to go against Caesar and say, Caesar, sorry, we're going to write our own currency. No, Caesar's got his currency. He knows I'm not stupid enough to believe that it's mine, even though I know the paper and everything he produces to produce the legal tender comes from the earth. But in his fictitious position as a lord or sovereign over those of his own, he issues this paper. And so therefore, if I was an ambassador from a foreign land and I'm inside, I come from another country and I come into the United States of America, what would a foreigner or an ambassador who comes from that realm use? Well, he's provided what is needed from that land. He doesn't go and write his own legal tender up. He's considered that the land that he sits on is still the land of who he represents. So I consider that I represent the highest power, which is of God, and therefore any of the monies that I have, I'm not claiming them to be mine. I claim them to be the jurisdiction of the issuer, and therefore I'm not opening a bank account and making claim to it under my Christian name. In order to do that, I would need to have a surname to attach to that, and therefore I'd be taxed on that claim because that's after acquired property, which is income. I'm not doing that. And therefore, of necessity, whatever someone gives me, I'm not silly enough to think it's mine because I don't even sign the legal tender notes. They're checks from the Federal Reserve. They're not mine. So if I'm bearing them, thinking they're mine, that would be a ridiculous concept because I didn't make them.
One of the most important and hard to accept lessons for people is the concept that when everybody walks around and says, that darn government is taxing all of my money and my earnings and my... No. Just what you just said is brilliant. It's not your money. It never has been. It never will be. And that's really hard for people to accept. But it's absolutely true. It's a copyrighted note of the government. It's not yours.
And I've proven that within peace, going to government offices, where I've given money that was required for something, where I went in just charitably to help someone who was looking to get some, I would say, government administration done. And when I handed them the money, and they asked me who to make out the receipt to, I said, cash care of Bank of Canada. And they checked off that I paid by check, even though there was a box they could have checked off cash. And I'd been in there before when people had paid cash and they actually checked off cash because they used their social security or social insurance registration name. Yeah. Therefore, they were laying claim to the money that they were holding. And therefore, they had to be a member of that in some way, implied or expressed, whether it's real or not. They're implied to be using the office of a feudal lord. And whether that feudal lord's in debt or not, he's allowing you to be the surety, even though he's the co-surety. We kind of make this very kosher. It's very kosher for him to allow you to be surety. And therefore, you will be the one on the hit until you relinquish it.
And you know, this is important as well to consider one other very important fact, and that is if it's not your money, my good people out there, if it's not your money, it's also not your debt. The only way it can be considered your debt is if you consider yourself a person, a citizen, and even then, it's still not your debt because you're a natural man, and this is an unnatural thing. And this is so important to understand. There is no debt on the human species. There is only debt in the artificial realm, and the only way that can exist and affect you is by literally accepting the name, literally accepting the number, literally accepting that piece of paper or the representation thereof, either digitally or in a check form, literally is yours. What a mistake we've made, eh?
It's where the ego comes in and the pride before a fall. And we understand that by doing that, we lead ourselves into our own hole, unfortunately, by not realizing what's going on around us in reality.
Absolutely. We're going to go to our long break. If you'd like to join us in the chat room, we're at corporationnation.chatango.com here on Republic Broadcasting Network. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be back.
Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel. Who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are men. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful. Let us use that power to make this life a wonderful adventure. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world to do away with greed. A world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Let us all unite.
Welcome, folks, back to the Corporation Nation. My guest today is Daniel, Christian name Daniel. And, of course, we're talking about Christian Remedy and Law, the name of Daniel's YouTube channel. I, again, give that a hearty recommendation. It's great to sit there and just listen to Daniel basically go through his learning process. How many videos you got up there now, Daniel?
I think there's probably upwards of, I think around 67 or 69. I don't keep track of it. There's another 6, just to let the viewers know, or at least the listeners know, that there's probably another 6. And I haven't updated a few videos. I've been asked to actually do a very direct video on free man on the land, what that actually is. Because that's a government, well, I would just say that's a direct plant to throw people off of what the Bible talks about, because the Bible talks about a free man in the Lord called by God or called by Christ. And it wasn't by chance the government agencies that are not on the good side, I would call them evil in high places, have literally been setting up a false representation of that, because if you say anything that looks like it's contrary to anything to do with God or the God of their world, the control of their world, well, then you're basically a free man on the land, which is now noted as a terrorist movement now in Canada. And certainly I have nothing to do with that movement, though I understand many of the points that they bring up. And I'm not sympathetic with some of the knowledge that they have dug up, but it's not accurate. And so therefore, it's been a concern down this journey to let people know that their due diligence is very important, because if they don't know who they are, they could be labeled something that they don't want to be. And I know recently some things that I have been involved with, I would say, researching and helping and also the notice that I put in, could certainly be labeled by people who do not have knowledge of the real truth that basically the creator of all life has put there, would label me as possibly a dissident. And I'm not. I'm a very peaceful guy. I will not bear arms against anybody. I'm not there based on an idea that might is right. That's what the Roman Empire is based on, opportunism, taking a weakness and conquering it, whether you're right or wrong, and then figuring a way to legitimize the people into your empire by giving them a supposed title that gives them an ability to be an emancipated slave, though he's still a slave under his feudal lord.
I like to call it enfranchisement.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
it's enfranchisement.
Yeah, well, that's the definition of citizenship. Denizenship, more accurately, is citizenship, and that basically means to enfranchise a bunch of slaves. Back to that original question I asked, would you not say to those sort of doubting Thomases, if you will, that would say, well, you're not really free of the system if you're still using its money, and you answered that question very well, by the way. Would you not say that the correct way of thinking is that in order for people to really escape this system in the correct way, which we're talking about, it's going to have to be one at a time, and that means that other people are going to have to help their friends, family, and everything else while they're still in the system. Really, literally, going to have to help people sort of. I guess you might even call that treason. I don't know. Actually, help other people who are becoming. Basically enemies of the state, if you will, because they're no longer want to be part of the state. And so it's going to take a bunch of people helping each other to get out of this by utilizing the very system that they're trying to escape. It's kind of a hard thing to...
I know, it's a hard thing to understand, because if you look back at the time of what was this early movement that Christ had founded, he's the founding of Christianity, not the Catholic Church, not Protestant. Christ is, so everything belongs to him. It's not an Anglican movement. It's not a Protestant movement or a Catholic movement. It was founded by Christ himself. And therefore, the whole beginning of this leads to, why don't we go to the source? And the source states that the early followers, again, I want to make this very clear, were not doing this idea of tithing. They were selling their entire estates, and they were putting it forward to seek what they considered to be telling people about the kingdom or the government of God that was to arrive. So they were not preaching a secular solution that some new dictator or new elected leader of a secular government or nation. There was no idea that would ever bring solution. It was a broken entity. It's a broken temple that had to come down. And that the real solution was going to come from a divine source, the creator of the entire universe, that knows how to clean up the mess that's happened here. So consider the landlord coming back to the planet, looking at it and going, oh my goodness, what the heck have you guys been doing down here, other than making a mess and trying to destroy one another to the point that you would actually not even have a place habitable. So I would have to believe in divine intervention, because to tell my children that there is a secular solution of man, a human idea, a human solution, how could you get enough people on board to ever do the right thing? And that's the difficulty there, without there being bloodshed and war. So my belief anyways has been that the divine source gave us a period of time down here, and the time's up. and all the writing's on the wall, and I am looking for to be on the right side, and therefore I realize the message in the code and all the prophecies were already written ahead of time to tell us we're right on it right now. And man's timing of running his own affairs is over, but the evil that would like to put man down the wrong direction would like to keep people thinking, in the majority, that couldn't be, and so therefore they deny a spiritual source, and therefore you see the mess that we're dealing with today. So there is no such thing as debt. Debt is a created concept. People believe in it. So how is the earth in debt? We create some idea that if you touch something that's not yours, it's debt. Well, that makes sense, and therefore I stopped touching what wasn't mine. And I realized that what I did have left over, even under bankruptcy rules, even in their world, was my unalienable given name, because if I did not have that, I would be a robot.
Well, is that not the only thing that is yours? In other words, nothing is yours, so you really can't use and abuse anything, and that's why you have to care and respect everything and everyone. I mean, isn't that the real point here?
Well, that's
that there is no ownership. Okay, we're going to go on a break. We'll be back.
It is like a finger pointing away to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water, like water, like water, like water. Water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. Water never goes stale, so you gotta just keep on flowing, keep on flowing.
All right, folks, welcome back.
Keep on
Here in the Corporation Nation.
under the sky.
Oh, we're here with Daniel, Christian name Daniel, Christian Remedy and Law. It's tough to break through to people. I've just been looking at the chat room and sort of responding to people, and you get comments like, I don't believe in a Jesus. I don't, it's so frustrating because I was there once there myself. It's not a matter of belief. It's a matter of basically understanding that the government, as it is it literally laws based on Scripture, laws based on the Bible. And government uses, whether you believe in anything or not, the Bible is using that against every single one of us. It explains everything to you in the Bible. So your belief is not required for government to use the teachings in that Bible against you. The more it can convince you to stay away from the Bible through the institution of corporate religion, the better government can control you. That's the ironic thing that I never could have possibly dreamed was the truth when I was back when I would just basically dismiss the Bible with the bathwater. It's an amazing understanding.
Again, when we were going back, Clint, and agree with you on everything that we're on the same page here, and I'm glad that the listeners can understand that you've done a lot of due diligence and a lot of research, and I've been there for that kind of painstaking, burying myself into the books, trying to do what best I could, because when I open my mouth, and as you're opening your mouth on the air, you're there to say truth. I know that, and you're sincerely out there saying, this is what I found. This is what I've researched, and I hope others will gather it, because you want an educated audience that's done some due diligence, and if you leave them with seeds of truth to go do their due diligence, then they themselves are going to understand what you're saying. And when we go back to just the word even swear, people don't realize that when they go into the court and they swear with the name in full, they say that surname, what they've said is that they've sworn allegiance to whoever controls that Gentile surname, that feudal name. And therefore, they know immediately that you will be judged by the law. You are not under grace, which is opposite to law, because under the law, you could be condemned to death even in some places. So if people understand that, then they're going to understand fully that when Christ was executed, Pontius Pilate, which was like pontiff, he was a Roman high priest of Rome, and therefore he held a minister-like position. Rome was a religion, and therefore he was able to govern what was his. Now, when Christ came, he said, my kingdom or my government is not of this world. So Pontius immediately knew that this man was spiritual and was not caught in the fictitious world of the Romans. And to hear someone speak like that was quite amazing and astonishing to him. And when he crossed the line, even though he knew that this man, he said, I find no fault, no error, no fiction, nothing erroneous with this man, no title from Rome with this man. He's not of our jurisdiction. I wipe my hands clean of him. I want nothing to do with this man's innocent blood. But unfortunately, the mob, the people, and the scribes, which were scribblers of man-made law, wanted to execute him because they knew that he was bringing freedom through the highest source. And they were no longer going to make debt money. They were no longer going to be money changing in anybody's temple if people understood this. So therefore, they used the Romans to execute him. But uniquely, when they executed him, they put a title over him because they claimed that he was claiming to be a king of the Jews. And so Pontius wrote right on there, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. And when they said that, well, you have to understand that the true meaning of Jew means tribe of Judah. People kind of misunderstand the word Jew, but it particularly in its very most understood meaning means tribe of Judah, which means praise, favor. So when they executed him as the king of the tribe of Judah, where all the kingly bloodline came through. So they actually acknowledged him as their king. Now, they got a little upset because when the Romans were going to execute him, and when they did execute him, they wanted that changed to saying that he said he was king of the Jews, and Pontius clearly said, I have written what I have written. So the Romans had acknowledged the fact that he was the king of the tribe of Judah, which was the last king of that tribe, because he was the official last king. Therefore, under the international law of nations, no tribe is part of the world of the G20 nation to date. Therefore, it's a separate jurisdiction. So when you say you are a Christian, you are saying you are of the tribe of Judah, and you are no part of the G20 nation. Therefore, when they executed that, that's called a perfect trust. That's an executed trust. And therefore, it's complete. But it only is complete by you acknowledging it and accepting it and walking with it. It doesn't work just by the idea that you play both sides. You cannot be part of the G20 nation and that.
See here again, this is where people say, get confused, because we have the concept of being saved, which is what the church sells to people here. Here's a license to do all the evil deeds you can, just acknowledge the concept of being saved. And what you're saying is that no. The concept of Jesus is literally a legal concept that you must accept in full in order to escape the opposite of that concept, which is to be fully ingrained as a legal person. You cannot again, serve two masters. And in order to get out from under, in a legal concept here, remember that. This is not religion. In a legal context, in order to get out from under government per its own law, per the maxims of law, you must show government that it is not your God. And it's that simple. And when you say Jesus Christ is a remedy in law, that's what you're saying. Am I correct?
That's right, because in Scripture it said Christ fulfilled the law.
Right.
So he canceled the certificate of debt or any charges or any, even in the idea of the old covenant that was with the Israelites, they were making sacrifices for debt, for sin, for charges, for things, for violating God's 10 commandments and other laws that were put upon them. So by him canceling that, he wiped it out. All that the legal world of the Romans did was create a legal idea of a fictitious debtor for those that did not believe in that.
All right, folks, we're going to go to another break. We'll be back. Stay tuned.
Liberty, privacy, civil rights, and dignity. You want some more?
And the men who hold high places must be the ones who start to mold a new reality closer to the heart, closer to the heart. Blacksmith and the artist reflected in their art.
We are back. Daniel, let's get back to our basically the remedy. Now, last week you started on Friday. You started reading your letter that you actually had written. It's a long letter, and hopefully we'll get a copy of that, sort of a generic copy without your name, I guess. Did you want to finish reading that? Did you want to comment on it? Did you want to tell us the steps leading up to that? Maybe we should start at the actual beginning. Is there a specific process, I guess, to go through as far as the remedy? Because again, there's no government document that you're going to be able to fill out, because no slave master is going to provide a document to release his slaves. So let's get back to the remedy and really cover the process here. What's the first step, besides what we're talking about as an understanding and comprehension of the language of the Bible, the legal concepts and everything? What is the actual first step that you took to free yourself from basically citizenship, personhood?
I think when you wake up on this, and I want to clarify something that we talked earlier about, and then I'm going to go right through what I did. I want people to understand that what Christ did when he was executed, they went, the civil Roman Empire, of which still exists today, over its own Roman surname fiction, title made up by man, constituted, which we get offers to accept, believe in, and walk with, and attach to our real name. When they crossed the line on Christ, which they had no jurisdiction of, the good confession made before Pontius was, my kingdom is not of this world. Very straightforward. World means secular, without God. And that's really hard with a lot of organized religions to understand that, because they rely on the idea of soliciting the world, staying in a state-organized religion to do such. But when Christ died, that was an executed trust, because he was executed for that trust to exist. When you participate on the side of another jurisdiction, you're what is called entailing your estate with God. You've sold your birthright like Esau did in the Bible, selling your birthright for a morsel of food. And that's what people are relying on. So most of the doubting Thomases out there that are listening in and sticking little blurbs in on the boards of doubt are basically saying, where's the remedy? Well, the remedy's right in front of us. But if you're walking in the non-remedy and expecting remedy, that's ridiculous. That's what we called insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So the people that are doubting are walking on the side of holding on to the debtor name, attaching themselves to that system, and then expecting that system to recognize them as anything other than a debtor or someone part of their fiction. Change your God, change your law.
I'd like to remind people that the definition of constitutor and constitution, a constitution is a debt compact, and a constitutor is a debtor. This is in the Dictionary Act, Bouvier's Law Dictionary. Go check for yourself. So if you're looking for a remedy within the system very much based on the concept that the nation is a debt nation. The Constitution specifically says all the debts still exist from before the Constitution, and if the constitutor is a debtor, there is no possible way to not be a debtor. You can go through the process of UCC, but remember, UCC, Uniform Commercial Code, is created by lawyers. It's not what you think it is, and it does not do anything except keep you within the same system and let you call yourself a creditor. Oh, yeah. So really, again, and I agree with that. You can't. There is no remedy within the system that is causing you the harm in the first place. There isn't a remedy. There are benefits and things that you can get as sort of a reward for being harmed, but you're still a slave to this. I mean, you're still a constitutor. You're never not going to be a constitutor to the constitutional society you claim remedy from. This must be done from the outside.
That's right. So I took a choice that happens when you discover fraud, because I would believe that if we believe in debt and that the earth could be in debt, which is a ridiculous concept, and I hope the listeners really pinch themselves on this. Squirrels don't think they're in debt. Okay, they're out there living, but we think we're over and above them, yet we have debt. So it appears if we have more intelligence, we have greed, so it appears that a squirrel doesn't go and take down another squirrel to get money. Doesn't need rent in its tree and just chooses another tree. But it appears people have found some way to not get along on the planet after they lost their spirituality from God. And therefore, all they've been doing is warring with one another over space and basically harmony that would never exist when someone's trying to be the owner, when the supreme owner is, as you said earlier, would have to be a spiritual source, because, you know, man being the owner is just going to bring about war and strife and wanting to harm his fellow man to stay off his space. And you'll never find peace in that realm. So this whole concept that we're dealing with here is being doubted because we're dealing with a number of people who are trying to find a solution within the error. And you cannot find truth when it's mixed with error. You have to remove the error, cut it loose. So everybody's spiritual freedom has been entailed by a fictitious error placed within the name that they use daily, because that is the thing that happens every single moment of their life on anything they do, which is based on law, not based on grace. And only the Supreme Source can bring pardon or grace. So when you think about it, even the governor of a state has the ultimate power to, even under the world of those participants who are in there, provide grace. So you could understand in the spiritual sense, only God can provide grace. But if you're in man's world, under man's idea of allegiance, well, then you're going to be basically subject to whatever goes with that territory. And if man has created a fictitious debt and you attach yourself to it and do not know it, then you're going to be in debt. So the Romans had what was called a first name, which was called a prenomen. Well, nomen meant debtor, so prenomen meant pre-debtor. So your first name was your pre-debtor name. Then you took on the other name that led to being your debtor name, known as an agnomen or a cognomen. Cogni meaning lie. Fiction name. Clint, I'm not trying to talk down to the audience. I'm trying to talk with the audience here. It is obvious, but it's under their nose and they didn't see it. And they didn't know it. And I'm not there judging them over it. But they have to understand that a surname is put on documents regarding writs of judgment. That's in Bouvier's law. Look under surname. And you will find that it was placed there dealing with legal matters of judgments.
So it's basically what you're saying is you're taking the ultimate judgment of God and you're assigning it to government.
Right, and you're saying that you're going to pay the debt, you're going to be the surety, versus in the Bible, it talked about God sending his son as the surety, according to Hebrews 7:22, to literally bring in himself as a surety for us. So therefore, he's taken it on, and therefore he has blotted out or canceled out any type of debt we'd have. And if we walk in that, we're walking with God as the creditor. It's not something you can earn. It's not something that you can work out. You do works of faith, but it's not something you can earn by working and saying, here's my value. It's invaluable. Because,
well, it's interesting, too, because, when we take an oath, the concept of an oath is to God. It is literally an appeal to God to judge you. So when we say that this is all based on laws based on this, on God and the Bible, that's literally what we're talking. I mean, literally, the oath is an oath to God. You say it before you go to court. You pledge it in the Pledge of Allegiance. It's all about this, folks. Stay tuned. Thanks.
Did you see the frightened ones? Did you hear the falling bombs? Did you ever wonder why we had to run for shelter when the promise of a brave new world unfurled beneath the clear blue sky?
Okay, folks, I'm going to give you a little homework assignment. That homework assignment is going to be to go to my blog, probably tomorrow at some point, where I'll be posting up. Apparently, is it your brother or your friend, Mladen?
It's my friend, Mladen. He'll be basically giving you the document so that if people want to review it, I'm just saying people should write from their heart, anyways. I mean, there's no set template for telling truth. You just tell the truth as it is, and you walk with it, and it's already provided. And
do you consider it evidence of law, of your own law?
Yes, I consider it evidence. Certainly, if they don't know what you're doing, and you continue doing the same thing the wrong way, they would have every reason to treat you in the manner of a participant within their jurisdiction. And why would they do otherwise until you make the changes? But I think that the majority of people don't realize it's all or nothing.
I'll tell you what, I will post that on my blog tomorrow as soon as I can. Possibly tonight, but I've not ever had much time lately. But we have 3 callers. Try to get through them all here, and then next week we'll really get into the letter and go by it piece by piece,
Sure.
and maybe that'll
Not
be a better way to approach it. But Bell in Delaware, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Clint. How you guys doing?
Good.
Great.
I think he's doing a beautiful job of showing us how we have violated the commandments of God. But is there some way we can get in touch with you, Daniel?
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're looking at the best way, I mean, because right now, I mean, I have to admit, I've been kind of not the best available by phone, as Clint's probably known. I've kind of been floating around a few phones because I've been doing more on a research and study, and I've kept myself kind of not plugged into that world. But I do have actually an email you can reach me at, and then if you tell me you need to talk to me and it's really important, then certainly I can find a way that we can converse on a phone somewhere. That's not a problem. You can reach me because I have enough. I have enough brothers right now. They're very entangled in the system, as a lot of people. So yeah, if you need to get a hold of me while they're trying to unwind their situation, they've left me availability to use communication at that end that would probably still work out if you need to really talk to me directly. But you can reach me at child144 at gmail.com.
Child144 at gmail.com?
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
Anything else?
Just one thing. Just one more thing. I guess for the listeners, I would have a very tough time following all this if I didn't have an understanding of the kingdom of heaven. There is another alternative system. Understanding that the kingdom of heaven operates off of faith, hope, and charity. Once you move out of this system, we need somewhere to go. And I think Daniel touched a little bit on that, on how they sold everything they had. I just wanted to make that comment there.
That's right. You're completely correct. So just think about it right now. Could you imagine some of the people that are in that world right now that are considered to be participants, and then they listened to this message, and then they took on the message, understood it, and said, you know what? This is right. I've been living the wrong way. I'm going to take all that I have, and I'm going to do this all for God. So I'm going to help my fellow man. All my monies now are available to go the other way. So they wind down their system and start using it in the opposite direction. Could you imagine? It's like a reverse multi-level marketing. Instead of a pyramid scheme the way it normally operates, that a new sucker is born every day in the Social Security and Social Insurance program, there is one coming out and going the opposite way with what they have. And this is where people are lacking faith, because what they have realized is sometimes their lack of belief that this would occur according to prophecy, that a large multitude would leave the system. Well, they're going to take what they have when they leave, because it appears Caesar may have left them with whatever they had that he considered to be tax at least paid for, and therefore he's allowing them to basically be unencumbered at that point.
Well, this is
last for long.
This is really just basically the concept of being reborn, if you will, being reborn back into the living life, and that's not going to happen just by going to a church and accepting license to do bad things. Literally, what you're talking about is the concept of being reborn, not what is commonly thought of the term reborn, but you're literally birthing yourself back into reality, back into the fold of nature, and that's so much easier to comprehend than what is perpetrated by fundamentalists who think it's a ritual or something that you have to go through. The ritual is literally just giving up all this stuff. Thanks, Bell, for the call. Wes in Idaho, and we'll try to get David in California. Wes, welcome to the show.
Yes, Clint, Daniel, what would happen if you simply submitted to the court an affidavit saying, I am a man, creation of God, not a person, or a natural person? Sometimes they try and define a person as a natural person. No, you cannot use the same word in a definition. True?
That's true. I mean, when they're looking at natural person, I just want people to understand that it's even been used in the Bank Act in both countries, and what they're talking generally about when they're talking about person in their system, they're talking about a legal person under their jurisdiction. So they're not talking about, and again, I want to be clear on this. There has been a good use of the word person in the Bible, but you have to know where to find it, and it's be another discussion later. But more than not, what we're dealing with when it's being warned, God is not a respecter of persons. He was talking about man's titles, man's persons, man's designations of rank or title. So man's fiction.
I'd say that's just a way of making otherwise good men accept personhood, because it's natural. It's the same thing as buying granola that says natural. It's not organic like you want to be. It's natural. You see, it's a marketing scheme.
They changed the definition of person, didn't they, to include corporations?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that the problem?
They're mainly talking. That's right. They're mainly talking, even in Canada, from my research, at least from my view, from what I've read, the only legal person, because legal is opposite to grace, so your God-given name is grace to you, bestowed upon you as a gift. The surname is a grant of debt. It's a grant of obligation by the crown of those who do not believe in grace. And therefore, that's the legal person they're talking about. So they call that the body corporate. So your spirit, your God-given name, is inhabiting their body corporate or their Roman house.
All right, let's
their house, trespassing on them.
To submit to the court an affidavit that you are a man, creation of God.
You'd have to submit that, though, as a person. So technically, it's kind of a double negative, I guess, would be the court wouldn't recognize a man. That's the problem. So it's kind of a double negative. Let's take David real quick before the show ends, and I want to remind people I'll post Daniel's letter onto my blog as soon as I can. That's realityblogger.wordpress.com. David, welcome to the show.
Yeah. Quick, and then I want a quick statement after this. What's the name of the website, Daniel's website?
It's on
Christian Remedy in Law.
It's on YouTube. It's a YouTube channel. It's called Christian Remedy in Law, no spaces.
And the other thing I would just want to say, in law, is that different tribes used to sacrifice their daughters to appease the gods. Okay, Moses upgraded it to calves and sheep. Jesus, behold, the Lamb of God comes away to take the sins of the world, which is which Paul writes, no redemption of sins without the shedding of blood. To me, when I first became a Christian, I was shown a book that really showed me that Paul, being a Jew, adopted some of the other. In other words,
David,
the blood sacrifice is not the way. It wasn't the thing. It's Jesus's message.
We'll cover this. I'll tell you what, David, call back next Wednesday. We'll cover this first thing. It's actually a good point. Thanks, Daniel, again. Join me tomorrow for Bert. Take care, folks.